She accused him of fraud, live on camera, humiliating him for all to see. But this passenger had a secret, and it was about to bring an entire airline to its knees. The air crackled with tension at Gate 12. "Sir, you absolutely do not belong here." The words sliced through the bustling terminal like a razor. Jessica Hayes, the gate supervisor, stood behind the counter, a self-satisfied smirk plastered across her face, as if she were bestowing a grand favor upon everyone present. Her voice, sharp and condescending, carried across the waiting area, ensuring every one of the 30 passengers absorbed her every syllable. Michael Peterson, a dignified man of 42, stood perfectly still, his crisp white shirt and tailored dark suit impeccable. His boarding pass remained steady in his hand, a stark contrast to the flurry of phones emerging from bags and pockets around him. A businessman, impeccably dressed, nodded approvingly at Jessica's harsh pronouncement, while a young couple eagerly filmed, anticipating viral drama. "This is first class, not your usual section," Jessica repeated, her pauses dripping with venomous implication. Michael didn't even flinch, he didn't argue. He simply watched her theatrical performance with an unnerving calm, the quiet certainty of someone holding a secret she couldn't possibly fathom. Have you ever seen someone's entire world shatter because they gravely misjudged the wrong person? The overhead speaker crackled, announcing, "Flight 4047 to Chicago, now boarding. 42 minutes until departure." Jessica, with an exaggerated flourish, examined Michael's boarding pass. She held it to the light, ran her finger along its edges, tilted it this way and that, each movement a calculated act of public humiliation. "These can be easily forged, you know," she declared, loud enough for all to hear. "Corporate fraud is surprisingly common these days." A hush fell over the waiting area, broken only by the soft clicks of phone cameras. Michael remained motionless, his hands clasped, his breathing even, his expression unchanging as he observed her spectacle. Jessica reached for her radio, her voice dripping with false concern. "Security to Gate 12. We need assistance with a possible ticket irregularity." "Good thing she's being so thorough," the businessman whispered to his wife. An elderly woman 2 seats away shook her head in disgust, not at Jessica but at Michael. A teenager quickly posted to TikTok, "Discrimination happening live at O'Hare Airport drama." Within 3 minutes, 2 security officers arrived. Officer Miller, in his mid-30s, his hand resting on his belt, and Officer Davis, younger, already assessing the scene with sharp, trained eyes. "What seems to be the problem here?" Miller asked. Jessica's voice swelled with misplaced authority. "This gentleman claims to have a first-class ticket, but I have serious concerns about its authenticity." She paused, letting her words hang in the air like a toxic cloud. "The paper quality seems off. The printing alignment isn't quite right. And frankly," another dramatic pause, "this doesn't match our typical passenger profile for premium seating." The crowd murmured. More phones appeared and a live stream counter now showed 37 viewers and rapidly climbing. Finally, Michael spoke. His voice held no anger, no hint of pleading, only a quiet, unwavering certainty that made Jessica's confidence falter for precisely 3 seconds. "Miss Hayes," he began. "Yes, I can see your name tag. I understand you're following protocol. However, I'd suggest you verify my ticket again, more carefully this time." As he spoke, Michael reached into his jacket pocket. His fingers found a slim leather portfolio. Inside, nestled among a business card holder and a platinum airline status card, was something else. A sleek black card with minimalist silver lettering caught the terminal light just for a fleeting moment, before he closed the portfolio. Jessica's brief hesitation was a tell. She'd glimpsed something on that black card, a tiny seed of doubt, but she was too far gone now, too committed to back down gracefully. "I'm going to need you to step aside, sir. You're holding up legitimate passengers." The word legitimate landed like a physical blow. The live stream audience surged to 84. Comments flooded the screen. "This is so messed up. Sue them. Someone help this man." Officer Miller noticed Michael's expensive watch, his impeccable posture, the way he seemed utterly unconcerned despite facing security. Something definitely wasn't adding up. "Sir, if you could just—" "Actually," Michael interrupted gently, "before we proceed, I'd like to make one phone call." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "That's not necessary. We can handle this through proper channels. I insist." Michael pulled out his phone with deliberate slowness, every movement calculated, every gesture designed to buy precious time. While the crowd watched, while the cameras rolled, while the evidence accumulated, he dialed a number from memory, lifting the phone to his ear. "Sarah, it's Michael. I'm at Chicago O'Hare, Gate 12. There's been a misunderstanding about my boarding pass." "Yes, I understand the irony." "No, I'll handle it. Just wanted you to know I might be delayed." He hung up. Jessica, emboldened by what sounded like a call to a lawyer or a friend, announced to the crowd, "See? He's probably calling accomplices. This is exactly the kind of behavior we're trained to watch for." But Officer Miller caught something in Michael's tone. The casual mention of irony, the complete absence of panic, the absolute certainty in his voice when he said, "I'll handle it." "Ma'am," Miller said carefully, "maybe we should verify this ticket through the system first." "I already did," Jessica snapped. "The inconsistencies are obvious if you know what to look for." The announcement sounded again, Flight 407 continuing to board. 38 minutes remaining. Michael checked his watch, not frantically like someone desperate, but like someone meticulously managing a schedule he controlled. "Miss Hayes," he said, his voice still eerily calm, "I want you to look at my boarding pass one more time. Really look at it." The tension was unbearable. Jessica snatched the pass from his hand. This time she saw it, a tiny corporate logo in the corner embossed so subtly it was barely visible. Her eyes narrowed. "This logo," she said, trying to cling to her authority. "It's not quite right. The placement is slightly off. Classic forgery tell." But even as she spoke, doubt crept into her voice, an unsettling tremor. The logo seemed familiar, like something she'd seen in training but never in reality. Michael nodded slowly. "That's a very interesting observation, Miss Hayes. That logo represents a service level so exclusive that most airline employees never see it. In fact, I believe the last training session on recognizing it was conducted 18 months ago." Jessica's hand trembled, clutching the boarding pass. How? How could he know about internal training schedules?" she whispered almost to herself. "I scored 67% on that test," she muttered, barely audible. Michael's eyebrows rose just slightly. 67%, just barely passing, if I recall the standards correctly. The color drained from Jessica's face. How on earth could he know her test scores? Officer Miller stepped forward. "Sir, I think we need to take this to the security office. Sort this out properly." Michael nodded once. "Of course, Officer Miller. But I'd suggest you document everything carefully. This situation is about to become very educational for everyone involved." As they walked toward the security office, Michael placed his boarding pass on the counter one final time. Jessica's hands shook as she picked it up, staring at that mysterious logo, a sickening dread forming in her stomach. The crowd, with their eyes and cameras, followed, sensing a monumental drama about to unfold. The security office, encased in glass walls, overlooked. Daniel Choi, the terminal manager, arrived, looking utterly miserable, his tie askew, his expression a desperate mix of annoyance and apprehension. "What's the situation here?" Daniel asked, glancing between Jessica and Michael. Jessica, finding a surge of renewed confidence, launched into her practiced explanation. "This gentleman presented what appears to be a fraudulent first-class boarding pass. The paper quality is inconsistent, the logo placement is suspicious, and the overall presentation doesn't match our security standards." Daniel scrutinized Michael's expensive suit, perfect posture, calm demeanor. A nagging feeling gnawed at him. In 15 years of airport management, he'd learned to read people. Michael simply didn't fit the profile of a scammer trying to sneak into first class. "Sir," Daniel said carefully, "if you could just step over here while we verify your ticket through our system." The announcement echoed through the terminal. Flight 47, final boarding. 35 minutes remaining. Through the glass walls they could see the boarding area, packed with onlookers, phones held high, capturing every moment. The live stream viewer count hit 200 and climbed rapidly. Comments scrolled past in real time. "This is discrimination. Where's the manager? Someone call the news." Michael pulled out his phone again, this time without asking permission. "Sarah, it's Michael again. Yes, I'm still here. Could you please contact Eleanor Vance's office? Tell her I'm experiencing a customer service issue that requires immediate attention." Account number. He rattled off 12 digits from memory, without a single pause. Jessica's face flushed. "See? He's calling more accomplices. This is exactly the kind of coordinated fraud we're trained to prevent. But Daniel Choi froze. Eleanor Vance. That name triggered an alarm in his memory. Eleanor Vance, VP of Customer Relations. Her signature adorned every corporate communication that crossed his desk. Sir, Daniel interrupted, his voice sharp. Did you just say Eleanor Vance? Michael nodded. Yes, she handles executive customer relations. I thought she should be aware of this situation. Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from his supervisor. Checks social media. Airport discrimination trending. Involves gate 12. Handle immediately. 2 more security officers arrived, crowding the small office. Through the glass, a local news crew was setting up their equipment. Someone had called the media. Jessica, emboldened by the additional security presence, pushed on. Officers, I need you to understand the severity of this situation. Fraudulent boarding passes are a federal crime. We're talking about potential terrorism implications. The word terrorism hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The live stream exploded with outrage, viewer count jumping to. Michael's expression remained unchanged. If anything, he seemed even more relaxed. Miss Hayes, he said, his voice dangerously calm. That's a very serious accusation. I hope you're prepared to defend it. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then looked directly at Jessica. This is Eleanor Vance calling back. Would you like me to put her on speaker? Jessica's confidence completely shattered. That's not necessary. I think it is. Michael answered the call. Hi, Eleanor. Yes, I'm here with several of your employees. We seem to have a misunderstanding about my boarding pass validity. Eleanor's voice booming through the speaker filled the room. Mr. Peterson, I'm sorry. What kind of misunderstanding? You hold our highest tier platinum status. You've been flying with us for 15 years. The room fell into stunned silence. Jessica's hands trembled, still clutching the boarding pass she'd just branded fraudulent. Eleanor, Michael continued, his voice steady. Your gate supervisor has suggested that my ticket is forged. She's also implied that I might be involved in terrorism. Eleanor's voice turned sharp, laced with disbelief. She said, what? Mr. Peterson, who exactly is making these accusations? Daniel Choi frantically pulled out his phone, Googling, Michael Peterson, Mom. His face drained of all color as the search results populated. Michael Peterson, CEO of Peterson Aviation Consulting, advises Fortune 500 companies on aviation strategy. Current consulting contract with Airline name, scheduled to present customer experience improvements to airline board. Daniel shoved his phone at Jessica. She read the screen, her face cycling through confusion, dawning realization, and pure, unadulterated horror. Eleanor, Michael said, his voice still maddeningly calm. I don't want to escalate this unnecessarily, but I think there's been a significant training gap. Could you please verify my ticket number? He recited the boarding pass number from memory, perfectly matching the ticket Jessica held. Mr. Peterson, I'm pulling up your account now. You're flying on, oh my God, you're on one of our new premium routes. That's not just first class. That's our Chairman's Circle service. Jessica stared at the ticket again. The logo she thought was slightly off suddenly made terrifying sense. It wasn't a forgery mark. It was the Chairman's Circle emblem, so exclusive, it was only mentioned in training materials, never actually seen in practice. Eleanor, how many active Chairman's Circle members are there? Michael asked. 12, sir. Eleanor replied, her voice strained. 12 people worldwide hold that status. The security officers exchanged stunned glances. One of 12 people worldwide, and they had been treating him like a criminal? Eleanor, I should mention something else, Michael continued. I'm actually scheduled to present to your board next week about customer experience improvements. Today's experience has certainly been educational. Through the glass walls, the crowd was visibly growing. The news crew had their camera rolling. Social media burrs multiplied exponentially. Chairman's Circle began trending alongside airport discrimination. Daniel Choi's phone buzzed again, this time a frantic call from his regional director. What the hell is happening at your gate? Fix this now. Jessica slumped into a chair, still clutching the boarding pass, the exclusive ticket she'd called fraudulent, the Chairman's Circle status she'd failed to recognize despite 18 months of training. Eleanor, Michael continued, I'm curious about your training protocols for premium service recognition. When was the last Chairman's Circle identification training conducted? 18 months ago, sir. Eleanor replied, her voice barely a whisper. We don't encounter these tickets often, so refresher training has been limited. And what was the passing score requirement? 70%, sir. Michael looked directly at Jessica. Ms. Hayes scored 67% on that test. Just barely passing, if I recall correctly. Eleanor's voice turned ice cold. That's below our minimum standard. How is she still in a customer-facing position? Daniel Choi felt his entire career hanging by a thread. Not only had his employee falsely accused their most exclusive customer, but she had been working below minimum qualification standards for how long? Mr. Peterson, Daniel stammered, his voice cracking. I need you to know that this is not representative of our usual service standards. Michael checked his watch, not frantically, but the composed precision of someone who dictates his own schedule. Flight 447 delayed 10 minutes for final passenger boarding, the announcement echoed. Gentlemen, Michael said, standing up, I think it's time we resolve this, sis. Eleanor, could you please conference in Richard? Eleanor's voice hesitated. Richard, as in our CEO? Yes, Michael affirmed. This situation requires his immediate attention. The room fell silent, save for Jessica's quiet sobs and the distant murmur of the swelling crowd outside. Daniel Choi stared at his phone, watching his professional reputation crumble in real time on social media. Jessica clutched the Chairman's Circle boarding pass, understanding too that she had just made the biggest mistake of her career. And Michael Peterson, CEO of Peterson Aviation Consulting, sat calmly, waiting for the airline CEO to join the call that would change absolutely everything. The connection took 3 agonizing minutes, 3 minutes of suffocating silence, broken only by Jessica's shallow, ragged breaths and the distant hum of the terminal. Through the glass walls, the crowd had swelled to over 100 people. Local news vans multiplied in the parking area, visible through the terminal windows. Michael, Richard Thompson's voice cut through the speaker, sharp with concern. What's happening? Eleanor mentioned some kind of incident. The CEO of one of America's largest airlines sounded genuinely worried, not with polite corporate damage control, but with the real anxiety of someone who valued a crucial relationship. Richard, Michael replied, his tone measured and professional. I'm at O'Hare with several of your employees. We've had what I'd call a significant customer experience failure. Given our current consulting relationship, I thought you should be aware immediately. The words landed like artillery shells. Jessica's face cycled through confusion, dawning recognition, and absolute horror. Daniel Choi gripped his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. Are you all right? What kind of failure are we talking about? Michael began documenting with the precision of someone who builds legal cases for a living. Your gate supervisor questioned the validity of my Chairman's Circle ticket. She suggested I was attempting corporate fraud. She implied potential terrorism connections. Security was called based on her assessment. This occurred in full view of approximately 120 passengers, multiple live streams, and at least 2 news crews. The silence stretched for 15 long seconds. When Richard spoke again, his voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. Jesus Christ! Michael, are you serious? Jessica, I assume you're listening. Is this accurate? Jessica's voice cracked. Yes, sir. I thought the ticket looked suspicious. The NAO seemed wrong. You thought a Chairman's Circle ticket looked suspicious. Richard's voice climbed to a roar. Do you have any idea how many people have those? 12. 12 people in the entire world have active Chairman's Circle status. Eleanor Vance's voice joined the call, her tone grim. Sir, I've been reviewing our records. The last Chairman's Circle training was conducted 18 months ago. Jessica Hayes attended, but scored 67%, 3 points below our minimum standard. She's been working customer service below minimum qualification for... Richard's voice turned lethal. For 18 months? For 18 months? Daniel Choi's career flashed before his eyes. He was the terminal manager. This fell squarely under his supervision. Sir, there was a staff shortage, and we needed... Daniel, Richard thundered. Stop talking right now. Michael pulled out that sleek black card again. This time, he placed it on the table where everyone could see it clearly. It wasn't just a status card. The silver lettering read, Board Advisory Council Strategic Aviation Consulting. Richard, Michael continued, his voice still eerily calm, there's something else you should know. I'm not just a passenger today. I'm traveling to Chicago for our quarterly consulting review. You know, the $12 million annual contract we've been discussing. The room temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. The contract where I analyze customer experience protocols for potential system-wide improvements. The one where I identify operational failures that could cost the company significant revenue and reputation damage. Jessica stared at the board advisory card, understanding flooding her face like ice water. She hadn't just insulted a customer. She had humiliated the man who helped design the airline's policies. Michael, Richard's voice was now pleading. Please tell me this can be resolved quietly. Richard, let's look at this systematically, Michael countered. What's the current corporate policy regarding discrimination incidents in public spaces? Eleanor's voice, now trembling, listed immediate investigation, mandatory training, potential termination, and comprehensive review of related procedures. And what's the estimated cost of negative social media exposure for discrimination incidents? Richard's voice was barely audible. Our legal team estimates $500,000 to $2 million in immediate response costs, plus ongoing reputation damage that can extend for years. The hashtag #airport discrimination is currently trending number 3 nationally, Michael observed. Chairman's Circle is trending number 7. Your stock price has dropped 2.4% in the last 30 minutes. Daniel Choi checked his phone. Michael was right. Social media was exploding with outrage, support, and furious demands for accountability. The live stream viewers had reached 800 and counting. Michael, Richard's voice cracked. What can we do to fix this? But Michael wasn't finished. He reached into his jacket again, this time pulling out a tablet. Richard, I've been documenting this entire experience as part of my consulting observations. Would you like me to share my preliminary findings? Oh God, yes, please. Richard practically begged. Michael swiped through screens with practiced efficiency. Failure point 1. Gate supervisor lacks adequate training for premium service recognition. Failure point 2. Security protocols escalated without proper verification procedure. Failure point 3. Management intervention occurred without reviewing customer status. He continued swiping. Failure point 4. Discrimination accusations were made publicly without evidence. Failure point 5. Terrorism implications were suggested without basis. Failure 6. Multiple violations of your own customer service standards occurred. The litany of failures hung in the air like a toxic cloud for 40 agonizing minutes. But here's the interesting part, Richard. This isn't an isolated incident. My research over the past 6 months has identified similar patterns at 14 of your major hubs. The training gaps are systemic. The oversight failures are widespread. Today's incident is simply the most visible example of a much larger problem. Jessica's quiet sobbing filled the silence. Michael, Richard whispered, are you saying this is happening everywhere? I'm saying your company has a $12 million consulting contract specifically because these problems exist, Michael stated, his voice firm. Today your employees have provided a perfect case study of everything we've been trying to fix. Michael stood up, his movements deliberate and controlled. The question now, Richard, is how you want to handle this. You have 2 options. Tell me. Option 1, Michael began. We treat this as a learning opportunity. Immediate policy changes, mandatory retraining, comprehensive oversight review, and public accountability. I continue our consulting relationship, and we use this incident to drive genuine systemic improvement. He paused, letting the terrifying alternative hang unspoken. Option 2, I withdraw from our consulting contract, document this experience in a detailed case study for industry publication, and your company handles the fallout without strategic guidance. The silence stretched for 30 seconds. Outside, news crews interviewed passengers, social media posts multiplied, the story gaining its own terrifying momentum. Option 1, Richard said immediately, his voice desperate. Absolutely. Option 1, whatever you need, Michael. Whatever it takes. Michael nodded once. Then here's what happens in the next 60 minutes. Jessica looked up through her tears, finally grasping the true magnitude of what she had done. She hadn't just made a mistake. She had triggered a corporate crisis that would reshape policies for an entire airline industry. Daniel Choi stared at his phone, watching his terminal become the epicenter of a national conversation about discrimination and corporate accountability. And Michael Peterson, the man they had treated like a criminal, calmly outlined the terms that would transform their entire organization. First, Michael began, Jessica undergoes immediate suspension and mandatory retraining. Daniel implements new recognition protocols within 48 hours. The company issues a public statement acknowledging the failure and outlining corrective measures. Done, Richard agreed instantly. Second, this incident becomes a mandatory case study for all customer-facing employees. The training materials will include full documentation of today's failures and their consequences. Absolutely. Third, I want monthly reports on discrimination incident tracking, training compliance rates, and customer satisfaction metrics related to premium service recognition. You'll have them. Michael checked his watch one final time. And Richard, I want Jessica to personally deliver my public apology in front of the same crowd that witnessed her accusations. Jessica's face went white. Through the glass walls they could see the crowd, the cameras, the phones recording everything. But Michael wasn't done. Because Richard, the most important lesson here isn't about policies or training or corporate protocols. It's about basic human dignity. And sometimes, the best teacher is public accountability. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the full weight of what was about to happen. Richard, Michael continued, his voice cutting through the silence like precision steel. Before we proceed with public accountability, I need you to understand the full scope of what happened here today. Through the phone speaker, they could hear Richard Thompson shuffling papers, probably alerting his crisis management team. The CEO of a Fortune 500 company scrambling to contain damage caused by a gate supervisor who scored 67% on a training test. Michael, I'm listening. Tell me everything. Michael opened his tablet again, swiping to a detailed spreadsheet. Let's start with the financial impact. Your stock dropped 2.4%. That represents approximately $48 million in market capitalization, lost to a discrimination incident that could have been prevented with proper training. Jessica's quiet sobbing intensified. $48 million. Her mistake didn't just humiliate one man, it cost shareholders nearly $50 million in 30 minutes. The social media metrics are equally devastating. Michael continued. Airport discrimination has been used in over 12,000 posts in the last hour. The sentiment analysis shows 87% negative mentions of your airline specifically. Daniel Choi's phone buzzed constantly. Now messages from regional directors, corporate communications, crisis management teams. His terminal had become ground zero for a public relations nightmare. But Richard, the financial damage is actually the smallest concern. Let me show you something more troubling. Michael swiped to another screen. Over the past 6 months, my consulting team has identified 43 similar incidents across your network. Gate agents questioning legitimate tickets, security being called for premium customers, discrimination disguised as security protocol. The silence on Richard's end stretched for 20 seconds. 43 incidents? Richard's voice was barely audible. 43 documented cases where your employees failed to recognize premium status holders. Most of those customers simply accepted the poor treatment and flew with competitors next time. Today's incident is unique only because it happened to someone with the resources and knowledge to document it properly. Eleanor Vance's voice rejoined the call, filled with fresh dread. Sir, I'm pulling up our customer retention data now. Premium customer defection rates have increased 23% over the past year. 23%? Richard sounded like he was having trouble breathing. Michael nodded, though Richard couldn't see him. Your training failures are driving away your most valuable customers. The lifetime value of a Chairman's Circle member averages $1 to $2 million in revenue. You've lost premium customers representing over $15 million in potential lifetime revenue. Jessica looked up through her tears, finally understanding the true magnitude. She didn't just insult one customer. Her inadequate training represented a systemic failure costing the company millions. Michael Richards' voice turned desperate. What do you recommend? I recommend we start with immediate accountability, then move to systemic reform. But first, I want everyone in this room to understand exactly what they're dealing with. Michael stood up, his movement commanding attention. Outside the glass walls, the crowd had grown to over 2. News crews from 3 local stations had their cameras rolling. The live stream viewer count had reached. Jessica, look at me. She raised her head reluctantly. You accused me of corporate fraud. You suggested terrorism connections. You called security, You did all of this because you failed to recognize a service level that 12 people worldwide possess. Do you understand what that means? Her voice came out as a whisper. I made a mistake. No, Jessica, you didn't make a mistake. You demonstrated institutional bias disguised as security protocol. There's a difference. Michael turned to Daniel Choi. Daniel, your terminal processes approximately 40,000 passengers daily. Of those, roughly 200 hold premium status, requiring special recognition. That's 0.5% of your daily traffic, representing 30% of your revenue. Daniel's face went pale. He had never considered the mathematics of premium passenger revenue. Your failure to properly train employees for premium recognition isn't just poor customer service. It's economic sabotage. Richard's voice cut through the speaker. Michael, I need specific recommendation. What do we implement immediately? First, mandatory recertification for all customer-facing employees. The 70% passing score becomes 85%. Anyone scoring below 85 is retrained until they achieve competency. Done. Richard agreed instantly. Second, real-time verification technology. Every premium status card gets instant digital confirmation. No more guessing. No more subjective judgment calls. I'll have it start development immediately. Third, discrimination incident tracking with quarterly board reporting. Every complaint gets documented, investigated, and included in executive performance reviews. Michael paused, letting the weight of systematic accountability sink in. But Richard, the most important change isn't technological or procedural. It's culture. He walked to the glass wall overlooking the crowd, hundreds of people watching, recording, sharing the story of discrimination and corporate accountability. Your employees need to understand that premium service isn't about the money customers spend. It's about treating every human being with dignity. The training failures that led to today's incident represent a fundamental misunderstanding of what hospitality truly means. Jessica's sobbing had stopped. She was listening now, understanding that this wasn't just about punishment. It was about education. Michael, Richard said, his voice laced with awe, I want you to personally oversee the implementation of these changes. Whatever resources you need, whatever authority you require, consider it granted. I accept with one condition. Name it. I want Jessica to be part of the solution, not just a casualty of the problem. Everyone in the room looked surprised. Jessica most of all. She undergoes comprehensive retraining, becomes a case study for the new protocols, and eventually helps train other employees. People learn more from redemption stories than punishment examples. Richard's relief was palpable. That's incredibly generous, Michael. It's not generosity, Richard. It's strategy. Jessica's experience today makes her uniquely qualified to prevent this from happening to anyone else. Michael checked his watch one final time. Now let's address the immediate crisis. I want the CEO, that's you, Richard, to issue a public statement within 2 hours. Personal accountability, specific reform measures, and a commitment to systematic change. I'll draft it immediately. And Richard, I want you to personally call the 12 Chairman's Circle members and explain what happened here today. They need to hear directly from you that this incident isn't representative of your values or your future standard. The weight of personal calls to 12 of the world's most influential travelers settled over Richard like a lead blanket. Finally, I want a board presentation scheduled for next week. Full documentation of today's incident, comprehensive reform proposals, and quarterly progress report. This becomes a case study in how to transform crisis into competitive advantage. Michael walked back to the table, picked up his black board advisory card, and slid it into his jacket pocket. Gentlemen, Ms. Hayes, what happened here today was inexcusable, but it's also preventable. The question isn't whether discrimination exists in your system today. Proved it does. The question is whether you're committed to eliminating it systematically. He moved toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Richard, my flight to Chicago has been delayed 47 minutes. Because of this incident, I'll be billing those consulting hours at my standard crisis management rate. Even in the midst of a corporate meltdown, Michael Peterson maintained the composure of someone who effortlessly turns problems into opportunities. Jessica, he said, his voice softer, you're about to walk out to that crowd and apologize publicly. Remember, this isn't just about you. This is about everyone who's ever been looked down upon because someone else made assumptions about who they are or what they deserve. Jessica nodded, finally understanding that her apology represented something far larger than her personal mistake. Are you ready to face the consequences of your actions? She stood up, wiped her eyes, and nodded once, her posture straighter. Then let's go make this right. The walk from the security office to gate 12 felt like a death march for Jessica, but something else entirely for Michael. He moved with the measured pace of someone who understood that justice isn't about revenge. It's about education. The crowd parted as they approached. 200 faces turned toward them. Phones held high, news cameras rolling. The live stream viewer count had reached. This moment would be preserved forever. Jessica's hands shook as she stood before the microphone, hastily set up by the news crews. Her voice cracked on her first attempt to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her words barely audible. "I need to make a public apology." The crowd went silent. Even the background noise of the terminal seemed to fade. 30 minutes ago, I made a serious error in judgment. I questioned the validity of Mr. Peterson's boarding pass without proper verification. I suggested he might be involved in fraud. I called security based on my assumptions rather than facts. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. Mr. Peterson is not only a legitimate first-class passenger, he holds Chairman's Circle status, one of only 12 people worldwide with that designation. More importantly, he's a human being who deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Someone in the crowd called out, "What's Chairman's Circle?" Jessica looked at Michael, who nodded encouragingly. Chairman's Circle represents the highest level of customer status in our industry. These passengers have typically flown over 2 million miles with us and contribute significant revenue to our operations. But even if Mr. Peterson had been flying in economy class, even if he'd never flown with us before, he deserved better treatment than I provided. A young woman raised her hand. "Are you being fired?" Jessica glanced at Michael again before answering. "I'm being suspended for mandatory retraining, but Mr. Peterson has recommended that I become part of the solution rather than just a casualty of the problem. I'll be working with our training department to ensure no other employee makes the same mistakes I made today." The crowd murmured with surprise. They had expected termination, not rehabilitation. Michael stepped forward to the microphone, his presence commanding immediate attention. "What happened here today wasn't just about one employee's mistake," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the gate area. "It was about systemic failures in training, recognition protocols, and corporate culture." He paused, making eye contact with individuals in the crowd. "But here's what's going to change. Within 48 hours, every customer service employee in this airline's network will undergo mandatory recertification. The passing score is being raised from 70 to real-time verification technology will eliminate guesswork about passenger status." A businessman called out, "How do we know these changes will actually happen?" Michael reached into his jacket and pulled out his board advisory card, holding it up for everyone to see. "Because I'm not just a passenger. I'm Michael Peterson, CEO of Peterson Aviation Consulting. This airline pays my company $12 million annually to identify and fix exactly these kinds of problems. Today's incident will become a case study for industry-wide reform." The crowd erupted in murmurs and excited chatter. The discrimination victim was actually the consultant hired to fix discrimination. The irony was perfect, the justice poetic. "More importantly," Michael continued, "this incident will be documented and tracked. Quarterly reports will go to the board of directors. Executive performance reviews will include customer dignity metrics. What happened to me today will never happen to anyone else." A local news reporter pushed forward with her microphone. "Mr. Peterson, what message do you want people to take from this experience?" Michael considered the question carefully. That power isn't about getting revenge when you're wronged. Real power is using your position to ensure others don't face the same injustice. He turned to address the crowd directly. "How many of you have been discriminated against in public spaces? Questioned when you belonged somewhere? Made to feel small because someone made assumptions about who you are?" Hands raised throughout the crowd. More than half the people gathered had experienced similar treatment. "Today's incident wasn't unique because it happened to me," Michael explained. "It was unique because I had the resources and knowledge to document it properly and demand systematic change. But everyone deserves that same level of protection and dignity." The live stream comments exploded with support. Dignity Speaks began trending alongside the original discrimination hashtags. Michael checked his watch. Flight 47 to Chicago is now ready for boarding. All passengers, including those who witnessed today's events, will receive written documentation of the reforms being implemented. He moved toward the boarding gate, then turned back one final time. Jessica, you have a choice now. You can let this mistake define you, or you can use it to help transform an entire industry. The training you'll receive, the protocols you'll help develop, the employees you'll educate, they all represent your opportunity for redemption. Jessica nodded, tears flowing freely now, but her posture straighter than it had been all day. Miss Peterson, she said, her voice clear, I won't let you down. Don't do it for me, Michael replied. Do it for everyone who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong. As Michael boarded the aircraft, the crowd began to disperse, but phones remained active. Social media posts continued multiplying, and the story spread far beyond the airport. Within 6 hours, the airline's stock price completely recovered and rose an additional 1.3%. Investors recognized that systematic discrimination reform represented a competitive advantage, not just a cost center. Within 24 hours, 3 competitor airlines announced similar training protocol reviews. Within 1 week, Michael's consulting firm received inquiries from 12 additional aviation companies seeking discrimination prevention services. Jessica began her retraining the next Monday. Her first assignment, developing a presentation called When Assumptions Become Discrimination, a personal case study. Daniel Choi implemented the new verification technology ahead of schedule, his terminal becoming the pilot program for industry-wide reform. And Michael Peterson, the man who was denied his rightful seat, transformed a moment of injustice into systematic change that protects thousands of future travelers. Because sometimes the most powerful response to being looked down upon isn't looking down on others in return, it's lifting everyone up. 6 months later, Michael Peterson stood in the same terminal, but everything had changed. The verification technology he recommended processed premium status instantly. Digital displays showed customer recognition protocols in real time. Training scores for customer service employees averaged 91%, 24 points higher than the old standard. Jessica Hayes approached him at the gate, but this time she was wearing a trainer's badge. Her posture radiated confidence earned through education and redemption. Miss Peterson, she said, extending her hand, I wanted to thank you again for giving me a second chance. Michael shook her hand warmly. How's the training program going? We've certified over 8,000 employees across the network. She beamed. Discrimination complaints have dropped. Customer satisfaction scores for premium services have reached all-time highs. She paused, her expression becoming more serious. But more importantly, we're changing hearts and minds. When employees understand the real cost of assumptions, financial, personal, and moral, they approach every interaction differently. Michael nodded approvingly. What's next for you? I'm being promoted to Director of Customer Dignity Initiatives. We're expanding the program to 12 other airlines. Your case study has become the industry standard for bias prevention training. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The woman who had once accused him of fraud now led industry-wide discrimination prevention efforts. Jessica, you've transformed a moment of failure into a career of impact. That takes courage. I learned from the best, she replied. You could have destroyed my career with a phone call. Instead, you gave me the tools to rebuild it on something meaningful. As Jessica walked away, Michael reflected on the broader changes rippling through the industry. The hashtag Dignity Speaks had become a movement. Travelers shared stories of positive service experiences alongside accounts of discrimination. Companies competed on inclusion metrics, not just profit margins. Daniel Choi, now Regional Director of Customer Experience, stopped in Michael's seat. The quarterly board report shows premium customer retention up. Revenue from high-value travelers has increased $57 million since we implemented your recommendations. And the human cost? Michael asked. Employee satisfaction scores have improved dramatically. When people feel proud of how they treat customers, they're more engaged, more productive, and more likely to stay with the company. Daniel paused, his gaze earnest. Michael, I need you to know that day changed my entire perspective on leadership. I was managing processes instead of protecting people. Now I understand the difference. As his flight boarded on time with perfect service recognition, Michael considered the lasting impact of that 47-minute delay 6 months ago. The discrimination incident that could have destroyed careers instead transformed an entire industry. Jessica's mistake became her mission. Daniel's oversight failure became his expertise. A moment of injustice sparked systematic justice. But the most profound change wasn't in corporate policies or training programs. It was in the thousands of travelers who now experience dignity instead of discrimination, respect instead of assumption. Michael settled into his chairman's circle seat, not because of the luxury, but because it represented something deeper, the principle that every human being deserved to be treated with respect, regardless of how they looked or where they came from. The flight attendant approached with genuine warmth, not performative courtesy. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Peterson. We're honored to have you flying with us today." "Thank you," Michael replied. "But I want you to remember, every passenger deserves that same welcome, whether they're flying first class or economy, whether they're a frequent flyer or traveling for the first time." She nodded, understanding that excellence isn't about exclusive treatment, it's about universal dignity. As the aircraft pushed back from the gate, Michael opened his laptop to review consulting proposals from companies across multiple industries: transportation, hospitality, retail, healthcare. Organizations everywhere wanted to learn how to transform discrimination incidents into systematic reform. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about getting even. They're about getting better, not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you.